evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio. Your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the love and revival of our beloved drive-in culture that means so much to us. Joined as always by my co-host and general manager extraordinaire, Mark. Say hello, Mark.
Hello.
I feel like it's been a little while. You know, we've had a lot of guest spots. Mark's been breaking away and doing some Canon corners. He's been rocking it and rolling it. But I'll tell you what, every single week has been incredible as far as a roller coaster ride here at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. So we figured we'd do a little recap. But Mark, I have to tell you before we start, the love that we have been getting for the podcast on the lot of late. I feel like it's one of those, like when we first started, word of mouth situations where people are really starting to connect with it. People are really starting to go out of their way to come into the booth and specifically say how much they appreciate and love the podcast. Vince, who you got to know and love on the lot, his connection is through the podcast, and he is now one of the newest members of the Mahoning family as far as being on the crew. So hats off for all the hard work that you put into this podcast, that we put into this podcast. It goes a really long way, and I think people truly appreciate what we're doing for the culture and are connecting with it.
It is funny because it is generally all of us who are on the show, we do this via Zoom separately. So I'm in my bedroom right now. You are in the trailer office at the drive. You are literally at the drive-in when we do this most of the time. We're all in different places, so we don't even see each other when we do it. So it's just us rambling, at a screen, and to know that is touching people in a legally inoffensive way. It's nice, and to hear that people like listen to them all, because we're up to like, this is I want to say episode 62.
Wow.
Maybe it's episode 63. Whichever number is correct will be the number that the end user hears me say just now. But we've done a lot of these, and that's a lot of hours. And for some people to get into it and go back to the beginning and start listening to all these, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, the thing that Vince pointed out to me, he said, I deep dived. I went all the way down the catalog, and the reason I fell in love with you guys was those early episodes when you did the crew highlights, when we put the spotlight on everybody and they told their story. And he was like, how unique and incredible is it that they include everybody, that this is truly a family outing and they want everybody's voice to be heard. And that's really how we roll with things, from the programming to the specials to the merch to everything else. We try to keep everybody involved and have their fingers in the pie to create the magic stew.
Not currently available in the Mahoning snack bar. We do. I was referring to those episodes, those early episodes with somebody recently as the origin stories.
Yes.
The first time we bring somebody on, we basically say, this is JT's story, or this is Sandy's story, or whoever, and we get their story of who they are and what brought them to us. And then when they come back, you know who they are, and we don't have to go over that stuff again. So we do have some newer, I almost said cast members. That's what they say at Disney, right? We have some newer members who we haven't done that with yet. We will go around to it. We did record, we keep mentioning it and teasing it. We did record an incredible, longest episode ever with the lot crew. And the reason nobody's heard it yet is because it's the longest episode ever. And
it's a marathon.
I'm trying to cut one of these every week. So it might
That'll be an all-season treat.
It might be. It wound up being 3 hours. So I need to either figure out if it's going to be 1 3-hour episode or 2 90s or 3 60s or whatever they are. But we laughed so hard during that show. It was quite a treat. So I look forward to bringing that to public ears very soon.
Yeah, and as much as this is a means to promote the theater and get the word out about what the Mahoning Drive-In Theater is doing, the whole idea with this was shining a light on the culture in general and reaching people beyond the Mahoning lot. And I think that this is doing that in a great way. And the people that reach out to us who really have no intention of coming to the Mahoning because they're too far or don't have the means or physically are unable to do it, but still love and appreciate what we're doing to keep the culture alive, it's really the fuel to our fire. And once we hit that mid-season, halfway point, we need a little fuel for that fire. It's every single night practically trying to take a show to the next level, and it can definitely start to stack up on top of each other.
Well, that's what I say is sometimes is tiring, never in an unpleasant way. It's just it's a brain workout. Is whenever I'm awake, it's what is the show that's coming up next? How's the show after that doing? How about 2 weeks out? We just announced this other show, and to do proper promotion for a show, because I say this so much, I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast or not, but the challenge of marketing for a place like us that's not showing the movies everybody else is showing at a drive-in. Every other drive-in has Hollywood doing the advertising for them. Everybody knows what these movies are for the most part. You see the trailers for months. We're showing basically a different movie every night. Some weekends we're showing 9 different movies or more. And how do you get the awareness out about that? Not everybody reads the newspaper, not everybody listens to the radio, not everybody does Facebook, not everybody does Instagram. So you really have to really aggressively get it out there. And viral, not meningitis, viral advertising has always been our strength in getting the word out and building what we have now, in hoping that people share it and hoping that you go to the right Facebook group about this specific thing and people there get excited and share it on their pages and all that other stuff. So it's a lot to juggle, and our brain is always kind of in the future. So there will literally be weekends coming up where I'm like, what are we showing again this weekend? Or somebody will say, what's the order of the films tonight? And I'm like, I don't even remember what the movies are. And I know I want to see them too. So it's a bit of a brain stew, as you were saying earlier.
It's constant, we don't just snap our fingers on the day and have this magic happen. We plant the seeds well in advance. We have people hard at work months in advance working on things that they bring to life that make a show magical. And it's an incredible, what it reminds me of? It reminds me of my theater days, when it was a true production, where you can get a group of ragtag people, sometimes strangers, to come together, and you plan, you work out, and you put on this incredible one-time, sometimes, performance, and let it live out there in the world. And it's pretty incredible to see our team grow every single year, and the people that come into the fold and add an aspect to what we do. Steve this year, James's brother, Steve Mills, has been incredible, and out of nowhere incredible. He will sneak up on days with just a mind-blowing costume, and you'll be like, that's gotta be Steve in there, right?
Yeah, you don't always know that he's there. He just suddenly you turn around and there's this incredibly accurate Frankenstein behind you, and he works once in a while. He'll say something to you, but he'll do it in character. Yes. He has a background in haunted attractions, haunted houses kind of stuff, and he brings all of that experience and pizzazz to our events when he's working them in costume. And well, if you go back to the Joe Bob show, when we did the haunted drive-in night at the drive-in, he basically organized all of the costumed actors that were there of his own volition to do a walk through or a shamble through the snack bar during intermission. And the whole idea was that they were going to just be, scaring people in their cars and walking around. And it was realized, kind of late in the game, that you can't really see these people in the dark because it's nighttime. When the movie's showing, there's no lights on. So he's like, we want everybody to be able to be seen in this amazing makeup and costumes that the Joe Bob people put together. So he had them shamble through the snack bar. And I have a video I still have not posted yet, but it was amazing. Everybody's jaws dropped. Joe Bob and Darcy had no idea. Nobody knew it was going to happen except a couple of us. And it was just this amazing thing where you got to just see these creatures in character, walking through and touching people, and not inappropriately, and scaring people. And it was great. So he does that every weekend that he's there. And he also has the Mills gene for decor and effective showmanship. and wanting to be on the roof every time. I'm like, those Mills brothers are here. One of them is going to be up on the roof sooner or later.
Yeah, now there's not just one on the roof, there's two.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a great right hand to James and the mad genius that James is. And obviously, Steve has been dealing with James's mad genius his whole entire life. So they really do have a way of working well together and communicating, as weird as it can be sometimes, communicating well together.
What lovely music for a murder, or 2, or 3, or 9. Who's this? Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet a dear friend. 9 killed you. 9 shall die.
Your wife, no, Fives. But you I will kill.
But you can't, Doctor. I am already dead. Dr. Fives, who samples the finer things of life in his own inimitable way, and experiments with fascinating instruments of death. 9 shall die, 9 eternities in doom. Are you ready for Dr. Fives?
Probably the most terrifying motion picture you'll ever see.
We're going to go through some of the stuff that's been happening in August, and our next episode, we're going to be trying to get Jeff on and do a rev up for September, which is, guys, it's stacked. It is crazy with the Tuesdays going on. Now that we have broken up our weekends into multiple events on a lot of occasions, it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. So I guess let's start where we left off. From my memory, we had just gotten over the love wave that Zach Ward gave us. As you guys know, Farkas from A Christmas Story joined us for our Christmas in July event. And I believe we had just done the Star Trek II Wrath of Khan screening, which was fandom extreme. But Schlockorama, let's talk about it. One of definitely the fans' favorite events of the season. Why don't you give people a recap on kind of what Schlockorama is?
Schlockorama is also one of my favorite events because it's what people think of when they think of drive-in movies. It's 50s-ish monster movies and stuff, and just sort of schlocky, trashy movies. Like last year, it was a big tribute to William Castle films, and we're exhumed and we joined together to recreate some of those original effects. And go back to last year's episode where we talked about that. We get into a bit more detail, but this year it had 3 themed nights. So Friday, July 29th was Weird Aliens. So you had The Creeping Unknown from 1955, and that is, I want to say it's the first of the Quatermass movies, which was a series of Hammer films about this scientist who's Bernard Quatermass, who always was the guy they would call when weird stuff was going on. So that's a movie where astronaut goes up into space, comes back, he's not quite right, and things ensue from there. The Terror from Beyond Space from 1958, which often has been said to be the inspiration for Alien, potentially, which is
definitely see while we watched it. It was great,
and it's a lot of fun. You know, Crash Corrigan, one of the great monster / gorilla suit actors of that era, plays the creature, and it's basically people are on a ship in space, and there's an alien who's very aggressive and basically wants to kill everybody, who's trapped in the lower decks, and it's trying to get them. And it's, you know, it's like it's like Alien or the last part of The Thing or something like that, the original Thing. And there was one scene I loved where they're like, oh, let's gather the weapons, and it was all like guns. Nowadays you see a space movie, it's lasers and things like that, post Star Wars. But here it was, we got a shotgun, we got some pistols, and at one point, when the alien
on the craft,
on the craft, and at one point when the alien is about to break into the level they're in, somebody literally has a bazooka. and now you'd think about that post, Goldfinger, you'd think, well, if they shoot that, it's probably going to tear a hole in the ship and they're all going to get sucked out into space. But this was earlier on in the game. I mean, I still think it was a good movie. It was still very tense and very fun. It's just certain things like that were done earlier. It seemed, a little funny now. And then we had The Man from Planet X, which is Edgar G. Ulmer film from 1951. That's a bit more of a slow burn, kind of a more dreamlike movie about an alien and people dealing with that. And then the last one was Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster from 1965, which is like a super cheesy, fun, made with a wink kind of movie that I believe features Crispin Glover's father, Bruce Glover, who is also known as half the trio of Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd from Diamonds Are Forever. He played like a bald, Spock-eared alien. And Harry he came up to me one day and he said, I found all these things in a film can, and they're these original. It was the original gimmick for this movie. It was called like the Alien Viewer or something like that. It was really just a piece of flimsy plastic with like goggles drawn on it that when they marketed the movie originally, you held those up to your eyes so that you could see the aliens or protect your eyes from the alien rays or something like that. And it was one of those, first 50 kids through the door get the Alien Viewer. He had an original 1965 bundle of these things. So he was selling those at the show, and he gave us a couple to keep after the show that we have. If anybody ever wants to stop in and see one, we have a vintage 1965 Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster Alien Viewers in the projection booth.
I love that stuff, the true gimmick. And Schlock plays right into that era when truly it was, anything to get in the seats. Still, that showing last year with the Tingler where we went all out, it was so amazing.
That was one of my favorite moments, I think, ever at the theater. Was what it took behind the scenes to pull that off was pretty complicated. But
William Castle spectacle.
I think the man would have been proud that night.
Oh yeah.
So Saturday night, the 30th, Strange Sea Beast. We had Godzilla 1985, which was the U.S. version of The Return of Godzilla from the previous year, Japanese film, where they said, okay, we had the original Godzilla movie, forget all those sequels. Now we have this one. He's back and he's mad. So when the American distributor got it, they did what they did with the original Godzilla from 1954 is they hired Raymond Burr to come back and play that same character who stands and goes, I think Godzilla's coming, which was a way to basically seriously truncate the Japanese version, cut out subplots, and really just focus on the action, which this did. The print looked great. The Dr. Pepper product placement was front and center and hilarious. And the American scenes did sort of have a little bit of I think a knowing tone to them. They weren't overtly slapsticky, but they were kind of funny. And that's a very, very rare film to see. I don't think it's been available legitimately in this country on video since it came out on tape or the tape, like late 80s, where then they would re-release them on the slow speed with the golden border around the tape, those like Star Maker videos or whatever they were. After that was Monster That Challenged the World, fun movie about a giant like sea creature with Hans Conried. It Came From Beneath the Sea, which featured early Harryhausen. What they said it's supposed to be like an animated octopus, stop motion octopus, but they couldn't or didn't want to animate all 8 tentacles, so I think it was 6. And then the last movie, which was very interesting, Beast of Paradise Isle, aka Port Sinister, sort of renowned as or regarded as a lost film. Never been on video. Very rare to see a print of it. Harry has a print of it. Had some water damage to it, so it was weird. It was like you were watching this potentially the last time this movie would play through a projector. Who knows? Because like the focus was in and out a little bit. But I thought it was fun. Like I thought it was no better or worse than everything else we watched that weekend. And it's a movie that I wish could get a legitimate, decent video release because I think it would be a fun one for people to see. And that's just like, mobsters versus other people on an island where there are giant crabs, which are depicted by just putting a camera really close to a regular sized crab.
Yeah, that old story, mobsters versus crabs. Who's not going to buy that movie?
It was fun. That was the movie that a lot of people were most excited. I think Godzilla.
That's the one I was so excited to see, and we decided to go away on our vacation a little bit early. So I missed that, and then I missed Monster Zero on Tuesday.
You know what else you missed? You missed Super Stooges Sunday.
Yes, I'm so pissed. Although it looks like we got some Stooges out.
We did. Are you talking about me?
I mean the fans.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had a few.
Well, you're always there. You're always
We had Harry ran 2 films, double feature. We tend to do fewer on Sunday. It was Have Rocket Will Travel, which was the first Three Stooges feature film after they stopped doing shorts. The Columbia Shorts department closed sometime in the 50s, late 50s. They were sort of without work. They were left to their own devices, and then the shorts hit TV and they exploded with popularity. So they brought in Curly Joe as the third Stooge, and they made this movie, which, watching it again, I didn't think was that great. It felt like it wasn't done by the people who usually do Stooge films. Like, it didn't quite have that feel. It felt a little off, but it was cool to see in the theater. Followed by the Three Stooges in Orbit from '62, a few years later. This felt like a Stooge film because it was written and directed by guys who used to do shorts.
Yeah.
The Stooges features aren't that great. I mean, the shorts are really what you want. And we did run one or two Stooge shorts, I think, during the night. One Stooge short between the two movies. The biggest thing that night, there was this short film that is incredibly rare called The Three Stooges Scrapbook, which was originally shot in color as a TV pilot for like a cartoon show, similar to what they ultimately wound up doing with the new Three Stooges a couple years later. And what they did is it didn't sell as a pilot. So I think they split it into, I read, 2 shorts that aired in theaters. And Harry happened to have attached to this print of the Three Stooges in Orbit, this Three Stooges scrapbook, which is interesting too, because some of the stuff you see in that scrapbook wound up getting reused and incorporated into the Three Stooges in Orbit. So it's like the times you'll see a short subject in front of a Disney film and you're like, oh, that's cute. It's a cartoon about whatever. And then that cartoon character winds up being in the feature you're watching. It's that kind of thing. So for fans of the Stooges, it was really cool and really fun. And it kind of rained a lot of that night, unfortunately. So it was a lighter crowd, and I'm just such a huge Stooges fan. I know the movies, the features are the least of what they did, but I just like them. So seeing those guys on the big screen for 4 hours that night was pretty special for me.
I'm glad we were able to do it, and it's one that does get requested all the time. And the idea of doing an all-out Stooges fan event is certainly not out of the question for the future. We have so many shorts, you know?
If we did the shorts, maybe what you do is you do 2 hours of shorts and then a feature. So if people don't like the features, they've gotten 2 hours of shorts and do the fan event thing. The Stoogeum, the official Stooges museum, is not very far from where we are. And in fact, some of our guests went there during the day before the Stooges night at the theater. So they went to the Stoogeum and spent a bunch of time and then came.
Hell yeah.
So
Stooged it up all day.
Yeah.
Stooge. Way to play. I like that idea. I'm writing it down right now. Stooges fan event.
Thank you. I'll go.
And honestly, like, that's what we're finding the theater has naturally become is we've always been a fan space, a place to come and wear your fandom on your sleeve. But a lot of these big hyper-focused fan events have been doing very, very well for us, which we'll get to. So seeing Monster Zero from afar, I can say that it was incredibly successful, incredibly well attended. Looked like everybody had an amazing time. James showed up on a Tuesday and rocked his Godzilla costume. So from what I understand, he was stomping the lot. Saw some great pictures, people having a fantastic time. Where do you stand with Monster Zero? I saw it on the big screen.
I feel like I've seen that on the big screen, but I couldn't tell you for sure. I grew up as a kid in New Hampshire watching Creature Double Feature on Channel 56, WLVI, and that was predominantly Godzilla movies. So I have a foundation of Godzilla movies in my DNA. So any chance to see that era of Godzilla on the big screen is these days very rare. Most of us, I think, only ever saw them on TV, my age or younger, and they do really well for us. I mean, the best night of Schlockerama was the night we ran a Godzilla movie. Like, people came out for that. So, and Godzilla Palooza has to be one of our most requested shows to bring back.
It's insane. And I did put it in Harry's brain earlier in the season, right around Schlock. And his whole deal is, it's not the hurdle with Toho. It's truly finding the amount of prints to fill out that full fan event. And also not trying to necessarily repeat ourselves with titles we just played. But he said that he's right there. So I'm hoping next year that we can bring back Godzilla Palooza, because boy, oh boy, was that a memorable one.
A snow cone, please.
Cut. What's with this snow cone bit? The word is water.
But I want a snow cone.
Now let's try it again. Now this time stick to the script.
Okay.
Action.
Water, please. So I get water. But where you are, you can get snow cones. Bring me one, will you please? Any flavor.
So we go from the big G to some weird madness of Real Weird Weekend. Holy moly. Not only did we have everybody come out and fly their freak flags, but it was absolutely a perfect weekend as far as the weather goes. We've been very blessed as far as that goes. But on Friday night, we had Pink Flamingos and Polyester, our John Waters double. And man, there were some shocked and awes, shocks and awes throughout the crowd all night.
And Harry had, this is a co-sponsored show with Exhumed Films we do every year. Harry had a stack of odorama cards for Polyester. And if you don't know what that is, John Waters, being a big fan of people like William Castle, who did movie gimmicks, he did basically a scratch and sniff movie. So throughout Polyester, these numbers will appear on screen, and you scratch the corresponding number on your odorama card, this big cardboard handout flyer, and you smell something. And it's usually not always something pleasant. And he had said in interviews, like, I love the idea of people voluntarily scratching and sniffing a fart smell or something like that. So you can totally watch that movie and enjoy it without that. That's how most people have seen it on video. But he had a stack of, I want to say they might have been original. If not, they were a later reprint. Maybe the studio has them. I don't know. But a stack of them for people they could buy if they wanted to watch the movie that way. So that was an added element. And then we had somebody dressed as Divine, pretty accurately as Divine, if I recall from the photos.
Yes, Frank Carey, who he's a regular at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. He's a super fan of what we do, loves hitting conventions, so he fits right in with the family. But he showed up in all-out drag and blew away everybody. And it was photo op city, as you guys know. And I love when the fans get involved and it's not something that's planned on our end. Like, it would have been amazing for us to say, hey, we're going to have somebody fully dress up as Divine and have somebody here. We'll do a sanctioned photo op. Didn't happen. But guess what? It did happen because our fans are truly amazing. And yeah, I got some amazing shots with Frank, and seeing him in his alternative garb, it was just incredible.
And that's something that we've had the benefit of really for years at the theater is, it's the Mahoning Drive-In Theater in Lehighton, Pennsylvania. In case you made it this far into a podcast without looking at the title or knowing what it was about. We have had people who show up in costume. We have people who show up in movie vehicles. We have people show up with their vehicles decorated. Sometimes they'll tell us, hey, I'm bringing this down. But a lot of times they don't. They just show up. And we are as thrilled, surprised, and entertained as everybody else on the lot.
Oh, it's so much fun. And like I said, jumping into that movie, I know there were people on the lot who have never seen that movie. And it just like knocked them in the face. And it was like, how are they playing this? Oh my God. And it was just so perfect for what we wanted that event to be, which is a light shined on truly alternative cinema. And we followed that up on Saturday night with our good friend Jeff Lieberman's Blue Sunshine opening up the night, and Naked Lunch, which that movie is so weird and it fits the bill, but I love it so much because I'm a Burroughs fan, and in high school we were going through our kind of Burroughs era, and this movie was essential. Everybody passed it around. It wasn't one that, you know, you could go to Blockbuster and just see a wall of them. So it was this very much handed around, passed along VHS tape of, you got to see this weird shit. On Sunday night, we roll right into our Goonies free community event. And this was something that was born, I guess, was it last year or was it 2020? I think it was last year. We did our Jurassic Park screening, I believe, on a Thursday. And we just opened it up. We just said, hey, we actually have a print of it, and we're going to run it low overhead. Let's just let people come in. And it was insanity. Now, my brain remembers that we reserved spaces for this event, but my brain was remembering the We Save the Mahoning event, which we did reserve spaces for, where Jurassic Park, it was truly, hey, the gates are open, come in and hang out with us.
And we learned a valuable lesson in the difference between those two ways of doing a free show. we
Yes.
said, because for the We Save the Mahoning event, it's like everybody wants to come. It's free, but we need you to buy a ticket online, free ticket, just so that we don't overpack the place. I mean, the reason we even ever had what we considered a sellout was because we reached the point where we're like, it's not safe to have anybody else in here. And the theater really the infrastructure can really only handle so many people before it becomes like Disneyland and everything you're doing is standing in a line for longer than you want to. So we said, we're going to make this a ticketed event for Goonies. It's free. And we just don't want somebody coming a long distance to have to turn them away, because people do drive from various states away to come to our shows, and it involves gas money and a hotel room a lot of the time and all that stuff. So we're like, and it sold out extremely quickly, free show, but
36 hours.
So, and it was 650 tickets. Yes, I'm looking at it right now, actually. 650 tickets, free tickets sold out in that amount of time. And we were nervous about this show because it was is it the first sellout we've had this season?
No, we sold out at VHS Fest, and we actually hit sellout at Zombie Fest night 2.
Okay.
But it wasn't official where we were turning people away at the gate, but we did hit 650.
So this was like an all hands on deck. It's, can we have volunteers?
Yeah, we were ready.
Stock. We've got a custom
Merch.
t-shirt. We've got tons of those. We're going to be able to satisfy. We're not going to run out of anything for 650 people.
Heck no. And then the gates opened, and I don't know why it was a surprise, because, you know, it kind of does make sense. You had people roll up who had purchased 12 tickets, reserved 12 tickets, and there's 5 people in their car. Oh, sorry, my other family members couldn't make it. And the percentage of people that actually came was under 50%. So as far as people that came and actually redeemed, quote unquote, their ticket at the gate, under 50%. So I know that I'm guilty of it, where, you know, you have tickets to a free event, you reserve a space at a free event, and then the day comes, it's like, well, that was free.
I equate that with all this, since the pandemic, there are all these really cool like lectures and things that go on.
Oh, the online stuff.
Via Zoom. And some of them cost a little bit and some of them are free. And there have been nights where it was a free one and I forgot and I looked and I'm like, oh, I missed it. You know, it's 10 minutes in, I missed it, or I think I want to do something else or whatever. It's the same thing. So there's no stakes when it's free. And for us, what I thought was, number one, you know, if we stock a lot of food, we'll use it the next night. It's no big deal. When you buy a lot of things specifically for an event shirts, that's a little harder because it's always harder to unload event merch after a show. It's usually really predominantly desired as a memento of something you went to. Now with our shirts, the designs are so great, and if they're specific to a certain film, we put those online and people anywhere in the world who couldn't make it to the show can get them. But the big thing for me was there were people who really, really, really wanted to come to the show and were like desperate and heartbroken when it sold out. And they were like repeatedly asking us, could you let us in? Could you let a few more in? And in our mind,
if anybody cancels, let us know.
Exactly. And then I think the scammers might have even stepped out at some point saying, oh, I've got tickets to sell at face value. And I'm like, that would be fun. That's how you know it's a scammer, when it's like, I'm looking to sell below face value. So you're your free ticket. I just felt bad that people who really wanted to come couldn't. So we're talking.
It was a heartbreaker.
Maybe that, and it was just like everybody came in, and then it would just stop, and we're like, "This is really weird." We're expecting
like, this is it. There was really a point, I think, right around 8:00, and we had a 9:00 showtime where I was like, "Should we announce that people can come?" And it's like, we just decided against it, used it as a learning lesson, and now we know how to handle our free community event for next year, at least in a means of making it as accessible as possible for people, you know?
And it was a good number for a Sunday.
Oh, it was incredible. It was one of our best fan events. People come out, and every single person that wanted to be there absolutely loved the Goonies, felt so blessed to be able to get in on a sold-out event. But, you know, on the surface for us on a business level, we're the only ones looking at that. On a experience level, it was truly magical. The love for Goonies never ceases. The amount of Goonies t-shirts and families. And there was somebody who came, like I said, and it was squads of 12, 14. And they tried to really get as many people to come out in their family as possible. So I think there's a real benefit to the free events. It shines a light on us and allows people to come on in and experience what we do. And this year, even more than last year, if you go with that family hit, obviously it's going to be incredibly successful and incredibly coveted.
Speaking of family films.
Oh, yes, it was perfect. We went right from the family film to one of the most beloved family films on the planet, Cruisin'. Al Pacino in Cruisin'. And man, was this a fun night. I haven't watched this movie in literally years, and rewatching it with the fandom for this movie, which, talk about niche. We tap into niche fandoms often, and people love coming and playing it up, but we had a guy in full leather, several guys in full leather. We had one in chaps with the kind of suspenders going on, shirtless, rocking around all night. And the best scene for me was right before we were about to hit like the heart of sundown, magic hour, if you will. There was a guy shirtless in chaps getting waxed down by his wife. So he was glistening.
Where was I?
It was magic. That was the front row madness going on. Plus, Harry had these amazing merch items.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, why don't you get into what Harry brought to the table?
So if you don't know the movie Cruising, it was very, very controversial in its day, based on a novel, and it's a William Friedkin film, and it's about Al Pacino going as a cop, going undercover in the gay S&M leather world of New York City in 1980 when the movie came out, because somebody's been murdering people in that community. So he pretends to be one of those guys, and it's him, as a straight guy having to go into that world, and how far do you go to stay in character if you're comfortable or not comfortable with it. And it's like a good cop serial killer movie too, but it's got this added psychological element. So there's a scene with Powers Booth. The cast is great in this movie. You've got Joe Spinell, you've got Powers Booth, you've got Paul Sorvino, and this Pacino kid. And Pacino's just wandering around the meatpacking district where these clubs are that everybody hangs out and meets up in. And he goes into this little shop, and Powers Booth explains all these handkerchiefs that are hanging of different colors and what they mean. And it's basically like what you like to get or receive from your partner. And Harry capitalized on that and made a bunch of there was an event, Haunt Love, I think, did event art for this, like a poster, and yes, he put that artwork on various colored hankies. So if people wanted to
represent,
if they wanted to use them as a joke, or if they wanted to legitimately find their favor at the drive-in that night, they could put them in the appropriate pocket, or just buy them to blow their nose into. So yeah, that was an interesting touch. And we had a good crowd, people who were really serious film fans, people who don't come out very often were there. Yeah. I got to meet somebody who was one of the movers and shakers behind the scenes at the Gilbert Gottfried podcast that our friend Dino worked on. Very cool.
Yes, he was incredible.
Josh was great. And some other folks I recognize. So yeah, and it's the great crowd that when you're there, and when Joe Spinell gets polite applause, that's cool. Or certain like Don Scardino gets, applause or something like that. They're like just these serious like New York movie film fans. So it was a really good, I think it's a really good movie. Some people don't like it in its day. It was controversial and kind of,
that's what I mean. It's a niche fan base. It's not one of those titles that like I said, is on Front Street all the time as far as fandom goes. But the people that love it, love it.
And it's Friedkin. Friedkin knows how to craft a good film, especially a good thriller, and that's what Cruising is. So it was really exciting to see that on film on the big screen.
It's happening. It's wild, and it's now. It's the Fonda Festival of Motion Picture Entertainment. 3 big hits starring that easy rider Peter Fonda in 3 completely different roles. In The Wild Angels, Peter tangles with the real McCoy, the Hells Angels of Venice, California. In Spirits of the Dead, he joins with Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, and Terence Stamp in recreating one of Edgar Allan Poe's most terrifying tales. In The Trip, Peter teams with Dennis Hopper and Susan Strasberg for a dramatic journey into the weird world of the psychedelic. It's a complete Fonda festival. The Trip, Spirits of the Dead, and the classic The Wild Angels, all in color. Don't miss the many moods of Peter Fonda in the Fonda Festival. 3 memorable Peter Fonda hits on one program. Rated R.
So palate cleanser Thursday, after the weirdness, after the cruising madness, we get into our fundraiser with the Philly Bully team, which was a single feature of Homeward Bound. But beforehand, we held ourselves a puppy adoption drive, which, oh my gosh, talk about cuteness overload. What the team does down at Philly Bully Team is pretty much fosters and finds homes for puppy dogs. And our lot king, Dave, had been blessed with Ollie, who is his newly adopted puppy. And he started bringing Ollie around the lot, and naturally, front row fell in love, second row fell in love, crew fell in love. And this idea came up of, hey, what can we do to support this? This is really a beautiful thing that they're doing. And I love how they represent their company. And we reached out, locked them in. We said, hey, let's pick a dog movie. Let's get some puppies out on the lot so people can squish them and rock it. Squish them, as far as cuddle them and snuggle them.
Yeah, be clear on that.
And it was a really, really fun night. We had Donerds come out, our friends from Jim Thorpe, who do amazing, what would you call that? Donuts. I want to say custom donuts, but
Craft
it's
donuts. They do these amazing
like
donuts where
donut.
You can get the Homer, which I think is what they call it, like a strawberry frosted donut. But they do ones that have like bacon on them and maple cream, and they're huge. They do like red velvet cake donuts. It's incredible work, and they taste really good. So whenever anybody, like sometimes Val will get some and bring them out to the theater. You hear the word Donerds, everybody perks up who knows who they are, and they're this just super sweet couple who. They support our theater, they support local business and all that. And they got a little shop in Jim Thorpe, which is this like resort. Is resort the right word? Touristy, cute town, 15, 20 minutes away from us. But they do have food trucks. They were out at a couple events last year. And it's always nice to have them out, but mostly because we don't have to go as far or find a parking space to get donuts from them.
I'd describe Jim Thorpe as the setting of every Hallmark movie you've ever stumbled upon.
I think that's accurate.
It's just very,
picturesque. It's cute. It's got cool little shops and eateries. It's a cool place to go. The hitch I've found is on most decent days, the parking is a little tricky over there.
Yeah.
That's where we tell people to go if we like them. That's where we go. Like, what is there to do around here during the day if they're spending a weekend with us? And it's like Jim Thorpe is pretty much the closest place to find. They do like whitewater rafting and scenic train rides, and they have
the biking,
house,
bikes, and it's a whole shebang.
Yeah,
for sure. But yeah, incredibly successful event. Homeward Bound played very well, not a dry eye in the house. And I always had a love for that movie. We were really on the fence of what we were going to play. Since we're on the podcast, I guess I didn't bring it up at all in the night because I didn't want to bum anybody out. One of my favorite movies, childhood movies, and Virgie's favorite movies is Adventures of Milo and Otis. And
yeah,
I posted about that movie, and somebody was like, that a lot of animals were tortured during the making of that movie. I'm like, don't ruin that movie for me.
That's what I'd always heard. What I had heard, and I never really looked deeply into it. It's a Japanese movie originally, but do the animals talk in that, or is it just narrated?
It's narrated by Dudley Moore, and he's so incredible. But we are going to bring back the Philly Bully team in the future and try to make this at least an annual and try to lean into our puppy friends. Our big promo for the night was all dogs get in for free.
I think it's a great idea. I think combining this with the Philly Bully team and or humane societies and things like that, and encouraging people to bring their dogs out, which you always can at the Mahoning. There's a small set of rules involved with that, but it's all obvious stuff. But people love to be able to bring their dogs out, and they're excited when we tell them, yes, you can. And
family members,
something that leans into that. People who love dogs, geez, if you didn't even have a dog, but you want to come out and just be around a lot of cool, cute dogs, it's a great idea. And there's a lot of, maybe we'll get Chomps on that screen. There's a lot of Shaggy DA. Actually could. We could make it with Disney because we have access to some.
We could totally do it.
That are dog-based. Old Yeller, if you really want to go hard into the crying. But yeah, I think it's a great idea, and it helps, a good cause. And people had asked about the adoption. It didn't work like you didn't just walk up, grab a dog, and leave. There was actually a process involved with that. It was really more to raise awareness about the dogs that are adoptable and let you meet them and maybe meet the dog you would eventually go home with. But to the best of my understanding, people weren't going home with puppies that night that they just saw that day.
No, yeah, they have rules about that and all that stuff. But yeah, they're incredibly professional and took the information of the folks that did want to adopt the puppies and made that all happen at their facility. So it was really nice, though, to get the puppies out, and there was a lot of kids on the lot. I got some great shots of kids just literally laying with the puppies and the puppies jumping on them. So it's really it's a beautiful thing anytime that we can give back to our community. So let's talk about the legend that was born with the AGFA Triple Ripper. What a fun night.
Okay, we need to lay down a little knowledge on this. So AGFA is the American Genre Film Archive. We've been working with them for a long time. They have a huge 35 millimeter print archive of features of weird old horror, action, exploitation, the fun stuff. This is what I think of as drive-in movies. But they also represent licensing and distribution for a lot of bigger companies and bigger titles. Like we use AGFA for our Patreon virtual shows every month, where I go in and I pick a title from their library that's digital that they would normally be sending out as a DCP to theaters. That could be anything Arrow has released, anything Vinegar Syndrome has released, anything like a lot of these cult labels and things like that. So it's a wider array than you would originally think from AGFA. But they grew out of the Alamo Drafthouse organization in Austin, and AGFA is still based in Austin. And the way the Alamo has shifted and changed and gone bankrupt and come back from the dead and all that, they're now a separate entity. But when the Alamo was the old Alamo that I used to go to all the time, everybody there knew what AGFA meant, because they were always doing AGFA screenings and AGFA nights. And I went to an AGFA, I think it was a 6-film mystery movie marathon. All anybody knew were that these titles were coming from AGFA, and that show sold out very quickly because people knew what that meant. So I think part of our mission going forward with the AGFA Triple Ripper show is to let everybody know what that means. Because to me, I saw the word AGFA. You don't have to tell me what the movies are going to be. I know they're going to be amazing. Yeah. And we worked with Ivan, who's the archivist down in Austin for AGFA, to come up with a triple feature. I believe they picked the movies, and the idea was that they were all sequels. And what we have is it was a wonderful night. It was one of my favorite nights this year. It was so much fun. Ivan was so cool.
Cinema bliss.
And I'm grilling him about the operations of AGFA and how things work and where these things came from and all that. So they prepared trailers to play for each film and a little intermission reel, and 3 features on 35 that came from them. Although actually, no, I think one of them came from Park Circus, if I'm referring.
Yeah, actually, 2 of them, all the prints came from them, but 2 of the licenses came from Park Circus.
Yeah. The first film was Doris Wishman's Double Agent 73, which we talked about in a previous podcast.
Lovely. This was so fantastic to see this on the big screen. And, we push the envelope all the time, but we knew this was Kichi fun. And it delivered. You were explaining it when we were revving up to this event of what I was preparing myself to see with this film. And boy, oh boy, you could have explained that for hours and nothing would have set me up for the fun that we had with this. When she pummeled a dude with her breast and just knocked him to the ground unconscious, I was like, this is the best night at the movies ever.
It's an exploitation movie from 1974, sequel to the film Deadly Weapons. Stars Chesty Morgan, who was a stripper who had an abundant bosom. And it's the definition of what exploitation is. You take an element that is marketable and you build a movie around that. They do with martial arts movies. There's a movie called Mr. No Legs, which is directed by Rico Browning, who played the underwater creature from the Black Lagoon. And this was a guy who had lost his legs, I believe, in a war, but he was a martial artist. And it's a martial arts movie with a guy with no legs. That exploits that. So that's what Double Agent 73 was. She's this woman who's got a camera implanted in one of her bosoms, and she has to take pictures of secret documents. And if she kills anybody, she has to take a picture of them. So it's brilliant in a way. It's a
built-in trope to get her to take her top off.
She has to take her top off every so many minutes in this film. And at one point, she's doing that. And she's taking pictures of a document that's multiple pages. And I leaned over to Val and I said, it's 400 pages long. This is going to be the rest of the movie. The acting is terrible. The decor and clothing are outrageous early 70s. and it's a ridiculous premise. And it was done, obviously with a bit of a sense of humor because it's ridiculous, and it was screamingly funny and hilarious.
It was so much fun. The only thing that could top that experience and the fun that we had with that first movie was the trailer reels that they put together and intermission reels that they put together. Mark and I have never laughed as hard as we've laughed together when watching a trailer of Jaws 2 that was cut together by clearly a projectionist who just loves film, but it was like a goofy take on the Jaws 2 trailer with things cut into it, with alternative music. All of a sudden, frames would be upside down. It was so much fun. Like, it's exactly what we wanted of bringing AGFA into the fold. Is just like you said, we're in good hands with them. Let's bring their love of cinema and 35 millimeter specifically to our love of cinema and 35 millimeter.
And the people who love the Exhumed shows and our Tuesday night shows and our Schlockerama shows, you are AGFA's audience, whether you know it or not. That Jaws 2 trailer was hilarious and brilliant. There's like a shot where a speedboat is going to crash into something, and they cut in the shot of a car suddenly crashing through a billboard. Like the speedboat suddenly turned into a car. It was insane. And I asked Ivan, where did this come from? And he's like, we just bought a lot of trailers and this was in there. Like, but he just,
I love that. That is so fandom to the max. Somebody would just rocked in their basement or at the table, projection table, just putting that puppy together. So proud.
I once saw a Three Stooges short at the Drive-In Monsterama show at the Riverside Drive-In, and it was somebody took a whole bunch of Shemp shorts and cut them together. So it was the length of a normal Stooge short, but they would like leave the room in one short and suddenly they're entering a room in a different story. And it took me a while because some of the later Shemp shorts were kind of like that. After he died, they were cobbling them together. And various Stooges shorts at a certain period, it would be 90% of a short you've already seen, but then it would sort of go into something new that they shot. So at first I thought it was one of those, but then I was seeing the splices and I'm just like, what is this? And it made no sense because it was basically just random scenes cut together, but it was really wild and unique. And that's the thing about 35 millimeter, vintage 35 millimeter, and shows like AGFA or our Patreon shows. You may be seeing the only copy of something that exists. That is the copy of that Jaws 2 trailer. It's not on video. You kind of have to be there to see it. So that's why I love these crazy shows that Exhumed does and AGFA and stuff like that, is that you're going to see things you've never seen before. And if you miss it, you will probably never have the opportunity to see again.
Yeah, it really does expand our love of film and what we can deliver here. Aligning ourselves with the right people really does kick an event up and over the top. So we finished the night out with The Gate 2 and Penitentiary 3, which I can suggest if anybody in this audience has not seen either, search them out. Penitentiary 3 was a freaking trip. It was a really fun time. We rolled right into Medieval Mahoning Volume 3 for Saturday night, and we tried something new. We've done the family event, we've done the more hardcore crowd, and we decided to mix the two and have a really long night. We played Page Master, opening things up, a little family fare, and then we made a hard right turn into Braveheart, which, man, that movie is so long.
Well, initially it was going to just be Braveheart, and I'm like, that makes sense. That's like somebody's like, we should show Titanic. What should we show it with? You should just show Titanic.
Yeah,
we can't start these movies until like 9 o'clock at night. And Braveheart, I want to say, is 3.5 hours.
It was insane. Like, there were multiple points when I walked into the booth and asked how many reels were left, and it's like 10. Like, what the fuck?
Most of our movies are not even maybe 5 or 6 reels.
It is crazy. But I gotta say, the fun of Medieval Mahoning, regardless of the films, is what the Sword Tag Society brings to the event. Again, aligning ourselves with true fans of this medium or this genre, I guess I should say. And they set up pretty much a ring where you guys can sword fight, kids can sword fight, parents can sword fight with their kids in a very safe way. They're like padded foam swords. And they also set up a bow and arrow station where you can launch bow and arrows and shoot soft-ended bow and arrows into targets, and it's a real spectacle. And we've been trying to figure out what that perfect programming is. I think next year the move is just to lean into the kids. It's an event that any parent could bring out their kids to, and they'd have a great time. It's like a little Renaissance fair almost.
I was going to say, that's one of these shows that we do where the daytime activity is kind of almost worth the price of admission alone. Like with VHS Fest, you could go to VHS Fest and have fun all day with the vendors and leave without even watching the movies and still have had a good time. Or you could just come and watch the movies and have a good time. And Medieval's, so much of, to me, that event is that live aspect during the daylight hours. Like, to me, that's really the show, and the movies are almost a treat after the show.
Totally.
That's something that maybe in the future we'll push a little harder, is really what you get in that daylight time, because it's so unique and cool.
It's a hard thing to sell, but honestly, selling it as a mini Renaissance fair is very easy pill to swallow. So we steamrolled into, by far, our most successful Sunday of the year, an incredible success, not just for the team, but for Mark personally. So this is a great place to thank Mark, even though we gushed over him all night at the event as well. What you put into this event was truly staggering, and I think it shows what we can do when we put all of our heart into something and put somebody who is uber passionate about a specific thing in charge of an event. It really can take on a life of its own. So I know you've been talking about it for months, but why don't you recap and go through some of the choice highlights that you had from Mahoning Monkey Mania Part 1?
Note the Part 1.
Yeah.
So I promise everybody, you're not going to hear me talk about this again until sometime in 2024. After this. So yeah, the guys, Virgil, one night on the lot, somebody mentioned the Monkeys movie Head, and he was like, oh, I'd love to show Head. And I said to him, I sort of took him aside that night. It was nighttime. I think it was after a show. I said, if you're serious about this, I can make this into something. I've got some connections in this world. And he and Jeff were bold, foolish, or generous enough to let me run with it, which I did. So what we did was we ran 2 episodes on 35 millimeter Monkey episodes. You've probably heard me talk about this before. 2 35 millimeter Monkey episodes from the late period reruns in the early 70s, which had different music over the romps. They would always swap out songs from the more recent, whatever the new album was. It was kind of brilliant. It was a way to push records. And even after they went off the air in 68, they ran for a few more years on Saturday mornings, and they kept putting the new stuff in there. Those versions of the episodes really have not been seen since then, and did not, for the most part, wound up on video. So we found somebody who has some prints, Harry being one of them now, and they have the original commercials. So I basically was copying an event that I saw the Egyptian Theater do years ago, where they ran a few episodes and then they ran Head. And I'm like, why don't we make this into like a fan convention? Why don't we make this into a fan event and gathering? So I contacted people, some authors, some vendors, and we had vendors there. And we had Mick Lawless come out, who's been doing monkey covers since quite a while, couple decades at conventions in New England. He came down, and he also runs a place called the Nevermind Shop, which is like a record store nostalgia shop in Massachusetts. Fred Velez, who has been involved with monkey stuff since the 70s. Mike Ventrella, who's an author from Stroudsburg nearby. He has written 2 books. Fred has written 2 books. Derek Miner, who's the guy who gave us the prints to run. He had a bunch of monkey stuff to sell, a bunch of records. And then we had Mike Evans, good guy DJ Mike Evans. DJ.
Good time Evans.
Good time Evans. He was DJing, because I know he's a fan, and he's got
killing it.
So we had all that going on. We had Tom Bafolco do a really great event poster, and crossed our fingers, held our breath, and hoped for the best. And a lot of people showed up. Like,
ticket sales were good, but they just kept flowing.
It was a line way down the block. It was everybody in their tour shirts, everybody in their monkey shirts. I met and connected with so many people to make this happen that will make the next one even easier. A woman, Kit Frisella, she does really cool, cute monkeys, like artwork and caricatures. I've seen her work online in the various fan groups. I asked her to donate a drawing, and she did, and that was super great. The raffle was amazing. It was one of our more profitable raffles that we've had this year, because it was all just very specific, very focused to this fan group, and stuff you mostly couldn't just go out and buy.
Right.
Friend Well, he said to be an anonymous donor. So a friend of the theater sent a couple things. He sent a Davy Jones bobblehead and a kind of a rare shaped picture disc or clear vinyl record. Ann Moses, who did Tiger Beat magazine in the 60s, she wrote a book about those experiences, a lot of which involved the Monkees, and she sent us autographed copy of her book. Bill Chadwick, who was friends with Mike Nesmith before the Monkees, auditioned for the Monkees, didn't make it, but was part of the production for all those years and wrote songs and played on the albums. He sent a beautiful photo of Davy Jones that he's got this thing called Time and Again Gallery where he's selling these photos he took back in the 60s. So everybody was just super, super generous. The vendors were amazing. Like I was an idiot kid, like, cause I got to look at it all first. I was just looking at everything and I'm like, it's like, and this is again, where you build it for a fan. If you were a Monkees fan and you went to a record convention, at best, you might find a fraction of the amount of stuff we had there. Most dealers have one or two things at best. You go to a record store, you might find one thing. This was just boxes and boxes and boxes of it. It was unbelievable. All the vendors and authors did really well. And we had some introductions that I gathered. I contacted Valerie Carey's Vinay, who was involved from the day the pilot started shooting until the day the feature film after the series ended. She was there like every day. She was in most episodes of the show. I did an audio chat with her.
That was beautifully done, by the way. Did you edit that together?
I did.
It was really well done.
There's a little bit of a longer story to it, but we chatted. She said she would be willing to do it via audio, not video. I'm like, that's fine. I'll just put photos of you from the show up there. And we chatted for an hour or more that I recorded, and it'll come out as a podcast eventually because we talked about a lot of other things that are amazing. Like we're about to get off the phone, and I mentioned that I had just seen the new Elvis movie, and she says a little bit about that, and she goes, you know, Elvis kissed me once. And I was like, excuse me?
Let me pick my brain up off the floor.
And I think I said to her, you don't just say, yeah, goodbye, see you later, Elvis kissed me once, click. I need the story. She told me the story of
wow, that's
she was like involved in so much Hollywood film, TV, music industry in the late 60s. It's amazing. So she's somebody I might want to talk to. She's in Vanishing Point. She's somebody I might want to talk to at a little bit more length in the future for this show. But anyway, I did an intro with her. We were able to get Mickey Dolenz to do an intro that I wrote, which was just wild.
Blew the roof off. It was great.
And then we ran the episodes in the movie, and people just loved it. People laughed. They cheered when Valerie's intro was over. They applauded and cheered when Mickey's. They laughed at the laugh line at the end. People applauded at the end of episodes, laughed during the episodes, which was wild to. I've only ever watched that show with like myself giggling. To hear a large group of people all laughing, it was great. And just so many people came up to me to thank me for doing it. A woman came up, handed me a bottle of this kind of rare now Monkees soda that was put out a few years ago, just like as a thanks for putting on the show. We had my friend Jess came dressed up as one of the Monkey Men. We had several people with the Monkey Men, T-shirt logo, and it was a whole lot of love, to quote a different band, and really wonderful. And I walked up to you at one point, and I was like, 2024, and you just sort of nodded and smiled. So we were able to announce that we're going to do it again in 2 years. We have to put a little distance between these to plan and let us do other shows next year. But we'll do it. We'll do it on a Saturday or a Friday, so it's not difficult for people to get to, because some people said doing it on a Sunday was a little bit hard for them to make it out a long distance. Though we did have somebody who came out from, I want to say, Michigan for this show, which he had never been before. He came out specifically for that show. We'll do it on an easier day for people to get to, and we'll open the gate time a little earlier so we can have more vendors and more musicians and more time to gather before the sun goes down. And then we'll show different episodes of the show and follow that with Head. The print of Head was great. The shows looked great on the big screen. It was wild seeing like this bizarre old McDonald's commercial and weird old toy commercials and things like that. And my source for those has 6 more that we did not run. So we can do this several times without repeating episodes. And who knows, maybe it'll be this biannual convention that Monkees fans can depend on. We'll see.
Yeah. It was a perfect night, and it was truly what the Mahoning does best. It was fan service, and it was to the max. When Mickey Dolenz came up on that screen and was talking about the Mahoning Drive-In theater, and it was just like, what world are we in, But it was, between the music that opened up the night, the live music, the vendor setting, the ultimate fandom, the music, obviously rocking and rolling. It was perfection. And we said it. There's a lot of great fandoms that we can tap into and try to put on a nice music fan event. And we're going to try for something next year. And like Mark said, you monkey fans have something to look forward to. Biannual. It's going to be fun.
Mr. Projectionist, stop the show. Here's great news you ought to know. We've just got a shipment of taste-thrilled treats, all tip-top quality and delicious eats. There are hot dogs and popcorn and candy galore. There's soft drinks and coffee and a whole lot more. So direct your steps to our refreshment stand to enjoy the finest snacks in all the land.
So Harry is very, very smart with his programming. I send him the calendar early on in the off season, and every now and then he'll tag up on an event, which he did for our Medieval Mahoning event. Tuesday night, the 16th of August, we rocked Knight Riders, George A. Romero's medieval classic. Tell you what, this movie played like gangbusters. I don't want to spoil anything, but at the end, there is a shocking moment that happens. It was like audible gasps across the lot. It was so much fun. Of course, George A. Romero, we absolutely love. We are connected to the George A. Romero Foundation. Anytime that we put George's work up on the screen, it's a hit. But where do you fall with Knight Riders? You a fan?
Yeah. Well, if you can say that about a movie, I think I've only seen once, but it was always this weird anomaly in his filmography. He's got a couple, really, but
jumping off the.
He's a horror guy, horror, and he has done some things that are sort of not many, but there's always Vanilla is one, and Knight Riders is another one. And my most memorable screening, so I probably saw this on video and forgot. We ran this once before as part of something. I don't know if it was a Romero night or something, but Exhumed played this a couple of years ago. And I just remember thinking it felt like a great drive-in movie. Something about the vibe of it. It's a little goofy. It's a little silly. You've got some motorcycle stunt type action. You've got a little bodiness here and there. And it just, I remember thinking, man, this feels like a drive-in movie, which I didn't expect. The vibe it gives off from like the poster is that it's going to be some kind of a strange, almost like an art film or something. But it isn't. And I recommend if we ever show it again, if you can see it. But if you can see it at a drive-in, it kind of works really well there.
Yeah, it was certainly like a rewatch, experiencing it in a new eye, and seeing it with a crowd. There's so much to be said about that is, depending on where you like to sit at the drive-in, especially on Tuesdays, it's like those first 3 rows just fill right up, and it's a nice kind of communal setting. And hearing laughs, hearing shocks, I love that so much. And the idea that we're watching a movie that's, 30, 40, even older than that, and it still just works like gangbusters is such a treat. So our annual Universal Monster Mash made its return, and it was a legend once again. So many memories made. Why don't you give them a little recap as far as the titles that we hit for those 2 nights of Monster Mash? 6 years of Monster Mash.
This is the 6th. It's so funny. We've been doing this for so long, and in the scheme of things, not that long, but they all blur together after a while. So if you ask me what the number is, I'm just like, it's Universal Monster Mash. So Friday, August 19th. So we're hitting big anniversaries on occasion here. And some of these films are hitting like they're really creeping up on being 100 years old, which is amazing. So we had started off with 1931's Frankenstein, which we've played. So we announced this slate, and there was somebody online who commented, "Yeah, it's kind of a lackluster. I would have picked different ones." And what not everybody understands is we do want to work through all of the films.
We are completists at heart.
What we want these to be is we want people who are casual fans to come out and be like, oh, cool, I can see Frankenstein on the big screen, which is what we opened with. Oh, cool, I can see, the big top of the pops icons. But we also want the hardcore fans to be beyond thrilled that they're going to see the Black Cat on 35 millimeter on the big screen, or they're going to see Murders in the Rue Morgue on the big screen. We just tend to put those later in the bill, so if somebody doesn't want to watch those, they can leave before that. So we started off with Frankenstein, followed that up with Dracula's Daughter, which had to be digital, and we'll get into that in a second because that was quite an adventure. And then we ended with Murders in the Rue Morgue, so Frankenstein's a super classic, and Dracula's Daughter is a little lesser known, but following has really grown for that over the years. And Murders in the Rue Morgue, that was the one I watched that night. I skipped the other two to work and get other things done. Murders in the Rue Morgue I really liked. It's based on the Edgar Allan Poe story, although it's based on a short story that doesn't have a lot of meat on it. So they really did what most movies do, like the Corman Poe films. You kind of build a story that eventually leads into where the Poe story is, or it contains within it that Poe story. And it's Bela Lugosi as like this mad scientist with a pet gorilla, and he's like injecting gorilla blood into women and killing them. I don't recall why he's doing the gorilla blood thing. And then eventually it leads into the story that in the Poe story. Very German Expressionism had to have been an inspiration for this film. It was an interesting effect where they had a guy in a gorilla suit for the most part, which they don't really look like gorillas, but you know what they're trying to be. But whenever there was a close-up, they would cut to an actual, I want to say it was probably an adult chimpanzee. It was a different looking animal, but it had at first it seemed silly because, it's not the same being. But after a while, it actually kind of worked, and it was kind of creepy and weird. And the whole movie was kind of creepy and weird. So I really had a good time with that. It was maybe 20 minutes or so into Frankenstein.
Yeah, we're all in the 35 millimeter booth. And by all, I mean Jeff, myself, and Mark. And, things are running as usual. And all of a sudden, Mike, who wasn't projecting, Robert was projecting, Mike burst in the door and said, "We don't have sound." And we all looked at each other like, wait a minute, what? So we checked what needed to be checked, sound heads, seeing what's what. And it turns out that the power supply for the audio had gone down during the movie. So we went from having sound to all of a sudden just nothing.
And the thing about some of those very early Universal films, they're early sound films. A lot of them had long stretches of quiet. So we in the booth, we hear the sound from the movie in the booth to monitor it while we're going. But if you're not looking at the screen, you don't really know. Sure. And I just thought, oh, this is one of those long quiet stretches until we heard that.
Robert didn't catch it. He was running. We were, just chatting up and all seemed well, and then bang. So that is worst case scenario for us, is something goes wrong with the projection. Our plans for months all of a sudden hit a halt, and we need to pivot. And I'll tell you what, the teamwork on Friday night was astounding. We were able to get the digital files up front, the digital copies up front. We were able to get the digital booth up and running within maybe 7 minutes, and we're able to get that image up on screen very fast and able to recover right around where the film had cut out. And I'll tell you what, it was anxiety for me, is something that I suffer from in general on my daily life. And something like this could have easily crippled me out. But the idea that everybody went up to that booth with me, that everybody was there, seeing if I needed anything, made that process so much easier. And that's why we do it, right, Mark?
Right.
We always have to have a backup, and Mark is very much responsible for finding those backups, which can be a challenge sometimes.
That started a couple years ago because we started experiencing shipping delays with prints. The Dick Tracy story we've told before. So if you don't know it, find me and I'll tell you. But that's what really solidified. We need to have on premises a Blu-ray copy of everything we're going to show, because we do have this sort of makeshift digital booth that works just fine. It's not DCP, but it works just fine. And we're dealing with equipment that's 73 years old in some cases, or decades and decades old. And as I was explaining what went wrong to one of the kids at the theater, imagine everything you own that's electronic, whether it's in a car, an appliance, a device, whatever. sooner or later something goes wrong in those things, or they just stop working. And that's the kind of thing we have to be ready to deal with. I mean, we maintain and upgrade as we can, but we have to be ready for it. So we always have a digital copy of something, Blu-ray, whether we buy it or whether a staff member brings it in or whatever. We have a stack of them ready to go. And bless Dave Wirt, he had brought in everything for the weekend to play in the snack bar, because we play stuff in the snack bar that complements what's on the screen, not the same movies, but just other Universal stuff as a kind of a visual wallpaper. And he just brought everything. So as soon as that went down, he had that disc ready to go. You had it up on the screen and we were rocking, to the disappointment of some people, because, you know, we're all about 35 millimeter, but we also don't want to say 20 minutes into the evening, bye. Yeah. Because what Jeff was saying to us, he immediately called the tech that we have for this piece of equipment. And it's a matter of when the guy can get out. And then it's a matter of, can he fix it? Does he need a part? Right. How long will the part take? So what Jeff was saying to us was, we might be running Blu-ray, you know, until next week or something like that. And for us, we operate Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, sometimes Thursday, and repeat. So my heart sank, because I'm like, we're all about 35, and is anybody going to come out just for video projection if they know that's what they're getting? So we played Frankenstein on Blu-ray. And then I believe we did the intermission like we normally would on film. No, we didn't. We couldn't, because we didn't have sound. Then we played Dracula's Daughter on Blu-ray. And somewhere, might even have been after Dracula's Daughter, very close.
It was after Dracula's Daughter. We got all the way through it, and I was ready to run a piece of like intermission reel that I had found on a Something Weird disc, you know?
Yeah.
And you radioed to me and said that we got the sound back. And I literally was like, shut up. You're messing with me.
I'm not that cruel. Yeah, we were sitting in the booth with Jeff talking. I was just contemplating leaving. I'm gonna go. There's not much more for me to do here. And
like the projection team, they were like, all right, well, our day is done.
Oh no, yeah, the guys were already saying, well, they're figuring out what they were going to do the next 2 days. Like they were pretty sure it wasn't going to be fixed on Saturday, so they were like, oh, well, I'm going to mow my lawn and do this, and I'll do this, and like they basically had the day off. And Jeff, for some reason, we were just chatting, and he looked in his bottom desk drawer and he moved some stuff around. And he's like, wait a minute. And he pulls out this like electronic circuit board. He's like, I think this is a match for that. So he and I went over to Patreon members. We'll see photos of this as it happened. We went over to the piece of equipment. We unscrewed the front, and he looked at it. And he's like, that looks the same. He pulled out the circuit board that he believed was the cause of the problem. And we went to slide the new one, and it didn't quite fit. So he had me get some sandpaper, and he sanded down the top because it fits in a slot, and it was the right width, but it was a little too tall. So he sanded it down enough so that it would slide in. It slid in, fit, connected it up, flipped a switch, and it was back on again. So that's when I called you, and we were able to announce to everybody, hey, our final film is on film after all. And our other two projectionists left, so Jeff wound up projecting it, and we were able to see Murders in the Rue Morgue on film, and it was great. It looked great.
It was beautiful.
Those prints always look great from Universal. Something about that era, they look good. They were well shot.
Yeah,
we've been continued to be film ever since.
It was such a roller coaster ride, and again, a test of our wills and what we can do when something doesn't go our way. And again, very proud of the recovery. And the only thing I feel bad about is anybody who may have left once it went down, thinking that they couldn't catch 35 the rest of the night. There was the one shot in Rue Morgue where she was swinging on the swing. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
That was brilliant.
Oh, it was so stunning. I was just like, this is just beautiful. So had a great time. Went into Saturday just all sorts of hyped. You know, we're going to have a great night. Last night was absolutely on fire. We sold out of almost every single piece of merch on Friday, which we hate when that happens, but it's always a really good thing. You know, our bar has raised over the years, and we're finding now that our numbers are raising more and more as far as being able to appease your thirst for the merch. But it was one that I'll remember forever, for sure. And will go down as one of my favorite events. James was on fire. Mr. Bones was rocking it. We had Mike Kenny come out and rock Frankenstein, like we talked about Steve Mills rocking around.
2 Frankensteins over the course of the weekend. Yeah, we had Mike on Friday and Steve on Saturday. 2 different looking Frankenstein monsters.
Yeah. So much fun.
JT's setup was a stationary photo op outside. It was the creature, the movies we were in on Saturday. The Mummy, 1932, so it was a 90th anniversary screening of that. Invisible Agent from 42, so an 80th anniversary screening of that. And The Creature Walks Among Us, which was the last of the creature from the Black Lagoon movies, where they sort of like, they take the gill man out of the water and they turn him into a land walking creature. And he's sort of, again, like a Frankenstein monster creature. And JT had like a life-size replica of that creature, and people could take their photos with it. And then Mr. Bones had his giant outdoor Frankenstein monster with all the old gear and the smoke and the lighting effects, and people were just going crazy for that. And then we had the mannequin we've used for years of the Karloff mummy inside the snack bar. So the decor was killer. People loved all that. The movies were fun. I just actually listened. Mike Kenny is on a podcast called the Monster Rally Podcast, where they go through all the Universal Monster movies. They hated Invisible Agent. I really liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's a cool idea that this guy basically takes an invisibility serum so that he can go and infiltrate Nazi Germany and rescue somebody and thwart the Nazis naked. This is a great idea.
I remember that. Yeah.
He's beating the hell out of all these Nazis, and he's naked, and he's parachuting into Nazi occupied territory, and he's naked. It's a concept I'm surprised nobody has done again in a more modern setting. It's a really cool idea, and it was fun. And half the time it felt like a Three Stooges short, because the Nazis were all kind of bumbling. In fact, one of the Nazis in the movie in one scene was a guy who was a bit player in Stooges films.
That's hilarious.
It was I believe it was the last of the Invisible Man movies. And it was just,
I just love the gags, like it's just so much fun.
And that effect is still so cool. How they achieved the invisibility effect and figured it out back then. It still works.
Yeah, it was it played incredibly well. And again, the weather was perfect. We've been getting that little bit of heat, but once the sun drops, it is like perfect drive-in nights.
Somebody said they saw a comet or a shooting star, and they posted a photo of it like next to the screen. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, somebody told us it was going to be on the night of Homeward Bound screening, but supposedly it was on the 12th, I think, or something like that. But yeah, the Mahoning sky here is, the stars are unbelievable. So let's wrap things up with two musicals. We came out of the wave of an incredible 2 days with Universal Monster Mash into the beloved Frank Oz classic Little Shop of Horrors for our Sing Along Sunday event, a series, I guess I should say, continuing. And we played Little Shop before for a sing-along event, along with West Side Story, which goes down as one of my favorite screenings as well. That print was absolutely glorious. But talk about a fanatical crowd. They were coming ready to party. And we pulled out all the stops. In this sense, in a weird way, the amazing aspects that blew your mind came to us. Got to give a huge shout out to our newest employee, Vince, who approached me at the beginning of the year, just as a Patreon fan, and said, hey, I'm involved in stage plays. I'm a puppeteer. I'm an actor. If the production team would ever need a hand with something, I would love to help out. I love what you guys do. And right away in my brain, it clicked. I said, puppeteer. I was like, we are planning a Little Shop event. And would there be any way you'd be into building an Audrey too? And he said, I'll do you one better. I just came off of a production and I could probably get that stage used Audrey 2 in different sizes. So right away we were off to the races and knew that this event was going to be something. But when he showed up with this thing and it came to life once he got into it, pretty much the way that it works is you climb into it and you puppet it with your arms. So your arms are the mouth. But in order to rock this thing, you have to have it over your full body and sit not in a comfortable setting and perform with this thing. So our thought when he came in with this gigantic Audrey 2 is, we'll do it in waves. We'll do like a 6:30, a 7:30, an 8:30. That way you're not in this thing the whole time and you can take some breaks. My man got in this thing at 6:30 and the fans never stopped until showtime at 9 o'clock. So literally he was in that thing for hours and never stopped delivering his all. And it was truly astounding. And the only thing that could make the night even crazier and more perfect is the fact that our, again, Patreon member, Gene Beretta of the Beretta Brothers podcast, connected the dots for an intro from Frank Oz. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Mark, but when that news came in, I was like, what the hell?
We have had intros from various actors and writers and authors and things like that. And they're generally people that are accessible. But when you think Frank Oz, he is like
Yoda, bro.
he literally was.
It's crazy.
You're talking the voice of Yoda, Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, many others.
Yeah, created Bert. What the
primary mover in the Muppets and Sesame Street. Directed some huge, great movies, including this one. He's a big time. He's in the Blues Brothers. He's a big time Hollywood movie director. And we got the file and I watched it and I'm like, this is great. He's
so
funny
good
and wry and telling stories and talking about his drive-in experiences. And he knows how to frame a shot. And I will say, for anybody who doesn't know, part of our Patreon is we put up for the middle and upper tier members, we put up all the videos that we play on screen. So if we've ever done an intro or a Q&A or we've had an intro live, we try to record those all and put them up there. So that'll be available for later viewing. But I couldn't believe it when we got that. And it's because Gene's brother has been involved with the Muppet organization for a long, long time. I believe he worked on Muppet Treasure Island and a bunch of things since then. And the Beretta Brothers podcast or vodcast, I think it's a video podcast. It's all about the Muppets. So every episode is talking to Muppet performers and talking about Muppet stuff. So I guess they had Frank on their show before. So they had that connection and they said, I need to watch it. They said it was a really, really good, funny episode with him. So that was one of those things when we announced it, it's like, people were like, what?
Like, holy moly.
Yeah.
And it delivered perfectly. Roar of applause when Frank came up on the screen, roar of applause afterwards. And literally, when we promoted Sing Along Sunday, our hope is that families will come out and sing along and get really into it. And oh my goodness, you could hear it bouncing off the screen sometimes. Everybody was having such a fantastic time with this movie. It played incredibly well. I believe it was the same print that we played years ago, which has some shown wear to it, but it is just one of those movies I consider nearly perfect, you know? So we followed that up on Tuesday in a weird way with another Rick Moranis musical.
I saw that when I was putting some of the promotion together, weird. And it's just like, wait a minute.
Connection, that would have worked as a double bill. But yes, Streets of Fire, Walter Hill's Streets of Fire, which, man, this movie is beloved. Not only is it an incredible film, but the fans for this film showed up and they wore it on their sleeve. So people came last night ready to rock and roll, coming right off of that screening last night. And it played incredibly well. Beautiful weather. We got a little spurt of rain right at 5:30 and cleared out as soon as we opened up the gates. So it was a great one. Where do you stand with this rock and roll fable?
I remember when it came out. I remember I Can Dream About You being a big video on MTV, and that song was big. And I didn't have an interest in it when it came out. So when it came out, I didn't go to see it. When it hit HBO, I might have seen a little of it because my father watched most of what was on. But I never watched it. I never really had a strong interest. But because the fan base has built so much over the last couple decades, especially the last decade or so, it gets screened more and more, and more and more people are really singing its praises. I've wanted to reassess it again. And I haven't watched it on video because it does screen a lot now. I feel like I'm going to have that chance to see it on film on the big screen. So what better way to experience anything for the first time than that way? And unfortunately, I was way too busy. I was literally driving all day yesterday to get back from my mother's 75th birthday in New Hampshire back to New York.
Happy birthday, Mama.
And she had a great day. We had a great day. But I would have loved to have been there for it. I just couldn't. So it's good to hear that people were really into it and came out for that.
It was really fun. And again, anytime that we can tap into the love of music as well as the love of film, it's the perfect marriage here at the Mahoning Drive-In.
Someday an 80s musical night or an 80s musical weekend is probably in order.
Oh yeah,
throw Purple Rain in there, throw that in there. There's a good number of them. So maybe we'll have another shot at filling the screen with Michael Pare again.
That's right. And of course, tons of stuff happening at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. You guys can always find the dates, the deets, the ticks at Mahoning DIT, like drive-in-theater.com. And also follow us on the socials. Like we opened up the show saying, the spreading of the word aspect, you guys taking photos and sharing them here on the lot, it goes so incredibly far. Even something as simple as recommending it to your friends and family, it builds our audience every single show. So we can't thank you guys enough, and we look forward to the next episode with you guys. Hopefully we're going to get Jeff on here, but again, Mark, the tireless editing, the tireless efforts.
Should I talk about that for 1 second?
Again, thank you. Yes, do it, because my mind exploded,
Nobody knows. So often in my life, I figure out a way to do something. It's not the best way to do it, but it works, and it's how I know how to do it, and I do it. Sometimes it is the worst way to do it. So we use Zoom to record these, and it gives me an audio track for everybody who's participating, which is really important as an editor, because if Virgil and I talk over each other, I can drop one of us who's cutting the other guy off. I can move him out of the way. I can manipulate it to a good degree. But the way we also do this introduces a lot of glitches into the audio. We get a lot of things where it sounds like a robotic stutter, or like a syllable is extended, or weird stuff like that. So I have to cut all that out. And it literally takes me like a day to do this. Now, other people have recommended other podcast platforms to record on. And if you have a suggestion, and the stamped envelope too. For the most part, Zoom works really well. I just need to figure out a better way to do it, because it literally takes me all day to slice out all of those ugly audio things that I don't want you to have to listen to. The show would be however listenable it is now, it would be even more unlistenable if you had to hear all those weird audio glitches, and I take out the ums and all that other stuff. So each one of these takes me a while. So if there's ever a week where we don't have an episode, it was because I couldn't find the time to cut out all of the when we're trying to say Oscar.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the effort, the passion, all of that, it's above and beyond. So can't thank you enough. Can't thank the audience enough for supporting us and helping us grow over this podcast venture. And we look forward to many, many more together. And I think on that note, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.